Welcome, Elizabeth. So nice to speak to you again. It's been a long, long time.
I know it has been maybe even almost a decade. 8 years
Yeah,
ago.
I would say so. Yeah. And gee, you've come a long way, girl.
Ah,
So tell me what you're investing in at the moment.
oh gosh, a whole lot of things. So I think for some quick context, these
Yeah.
days I'm running a VC fund called Hustle Fund, which is different from
Right.
when we first met. And for Hustle Fund, we invest in very, very early stage companies. Like, I've invested in early stage companies, but this is very, very early. And by that I mean, companies may not even have any traction whatsoever and barely a product.
Okay.
So that means that we are doing a lot of bulk investing, and already in about 2 years we've done over 135 investments. So kind of
Wow.
all over the board.
Fantastic. And I gather you probably are also very women friendly, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, one of the things that I've always believed and very much aligned with at 500 Startups is that
Yeah.
diversity is an asset. And I think my own personal record, at least with Hustle Fund, is 40% of the companies that I've invested in have at least one female founder. So,
Wow. That's so good.
yeah.
Good work, you. You're giving back, paying it all back. That's fantastic.
Well, the thing is,
Um,
I don't really see it as charity. I mean, I think
no,
to be
no,
fair,
no.
it's an opportunity. You
Yeah,
make your money by finding opportunities that other investors don't, and
yeah.
that's great for me.
And I agree with you. I think diversity just brings so much more creativity and innovation. So good work. So how are you managing current investments with the crisis?
Yeah, we're still very active. I think that my thinking on this is twofold. So one is
Okay.
there's our existing portfolio, and then there's our new potential portfolio companies. And certainly on the existing portfolio front, there's just been a lot more that we've been involved with there. Like generally speaking, high frequency investing VC firms cannot spend a lot of time with each company. That's just the nature of the model. When you have
Mm-hmm.
35 portfolio companies, you are not taking board seats. You're not spending, hours every week with each company. And so that's just a very different model. But more recently, in the last, I'd say 2 or 3 months, we have been spending a lot of time. And that basically just means burning the midnight oil to spend time with our portfolio founders. Everything from therapy, and I don't think I'm a qualified, trainer or anything, just morale and encouragement, that kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
also helping people think through their cash flow, their cash management, and also even how do you fire somebody? And that hurts. That just
Yeah.
nobody likes to fire people. And for many of our founders, it's the first time where they've had to make very difficult decisions. And that's something that we've been kind of helping our founders with and think through that stuff. On the new portfolio front, we're as active as ever. So, I think basically it just means there's just a lot more work all around between those two things.
And you're okay with not physically meeting founders from potential investments now?
Oh, that's a great point. So, actually, unlike many other VCs, we have always invested remotely. So, for us, it's not a change.
Ah, oh, okay. Very
And
good.
and that's because all of our companies are literally all over the place in the US, Canada, and now Southeast Asia. So we've always taken Zoom calls. There are very few founders I've actually met in person ever, even pre, COVID.
Hmm.
So we haven't changed anything with regard to that.
Hmm. That's fascinating. And uh, what are your thoughts about, like, what would your advice be to startups about how to survive the current crisis?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think there are companies that will survive, and then there are also a very small percentage of companies that will even thrive. And so what I mean by that is not necessarily that they landed in an industry that's doing phenomenal, although of course if you're in health or remote work, you may be in that boat, but
Mm.
The way I think about it is if you can get your own burn under control first, then you can actually become opportunistic and really thrive. So, for example, we have a couple of portfolio companies that are in industries that are really hurting, and a lot of industries are really hurting. And so their revenues have dropped certainly. But if you are lean enough and you can get your burn under control, then you can actually be opportunistic. Like all of your competitors and alternatives in the space are also hurting. And if their
Yes.
burn is not under control, those companies are kind of at risk. And so if
Yeah.
you want to be opportunistic in this environment, you can actually go and acquire companies for basically $0. And even though you're hurting as well, like it's more of a matter of, well, who's hurting more. So that's kind of an interesting way to think about it. And that is
Yep.
kind of the position that I would love all of our portfolio companies to get to. Not
Yep.
everybody will, of course. That's a very hard thing to get to, but that is kind of the direction we're trying to usher everybody towards.
Okay. So that's a really good point, and no one's really spoken about that, but obviously there's always opportunities in crisis. What is your personal insight or takeaway that you've taken out of this whole lockdown and the virus and the problems as regards no business for for 3 months or so?
Well, I think all rules have been thrown out the window. I don't think you can really predict who is going to win, who's going to lose. You see big companies that 4 months ago were considered very strong IPO candidates, or were very strong, big businesses as well. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden you're seeing a lot of people declare bankruptcy or are having to do all kinds of drastic things that will change their business. And so I think this is going to be very interesting and chaotic. It already is. And
Mm.
ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not about how much money you raised. It's not about what was going well for you before. But the people who win in this environment are the people who can react quickly, learn
Hmm.
quickly, and have really strong cash management. And I think people have always sort of said that, but the last few years have been incredibly frothy. And this is where
Yes.
we will see the pack separate based on some of those basics.
Right. Um, and what do you think? Again, this is a big question, and I know everyone, it's sort of impossible to answer, but what's your prediction for the next 12 months as regards investing in startups and then possibly 2 years down the line? Like, what do you think it's going to look like? I know it's like a stab in the dark, but it, it's interesting to hear people's perspectives.
Yep. So I think speaking from the early stage private markets, I think there's nothing fundamental. There was nothing fundamentally wrong with how things were pre-COVID, unlike in 2008 and 2009. And so what you're seeing here are a couple of things that are happening in early stage fundraising or early stage investing, which is number one, a point that you brought up before was a lot of investors are not quite used to this new workflow of investing in companies without having met them in person. So you are seeing the slowing of deals happen as a result of that. And the second thing is, even though a lot of VCs have cash, they have new funds that they need to invest, there are a lot of VCs who are privately talking about holding back and looking for the most opportunistic deals. And so you're going to see a lot of people
Ah,
sitting on the sidelines as a result of that as well. So those two things combined, I
ah,
think, are actually very interesting in that we're already starting to see this. Valuations are starting to go down quite a bit. And I
right.
actually think that if you're an early stage investor, going into the fall will be a really phenomenal period of time for investing. It's
Right.
starting in that direction, but I think it will go more so in that direction. Combined with the fact that my prediction is that we will have a second wave of this. Like certainly the United States is not handling COVID very
Yes.
well. So I mean, we don't have a vaccine. We're not going to have a vaccine for at least a year. So, pulling that all together, if you're not handling the situation well and there's no vaccine, then we're definitely going to
Yeah.
the situation pop up again, which means there'll
Yeah.
be more lockdowns and more of this. and that
Yeah.
will just affect investors even more. So I think basically what I'm saying is we're very opportunistic from an investing perspective. And
Okay.
speaking, I think for the founders, I don't think there's ever a right time, a good time, or a bad time to start a business. I think the right time is when you see an opportunity for your company. It really shouldn't matter what the investors are doing. And we're going to also see, the best founders emerge from this time as well, because those are the people who really are serious about building a business. They're not the people like maybe last year who would say things like, well, if I raise $2 million, I'm going to go and build this company. No, the people you see building a business now, they are the real deal. And I really do applaud every entrepreneur who is starting a company now, because like these are the people who will survive and thrive.
Right. And personally, what do you think a founder needs to get through this period and to be one of those incredible startups that are going to win out of this?
Yeah, and I think partly where I'm coming from is I started my company during the last recession.
Yes, I
Like,
know.
it was impossible to raise money at first. Like, I left my cushy job at Google in late 2008. By the time 2009 rolled around, valuations had hit the floor. I would have been desperate to take any offer, but nobody offered to invest. So it was a good couple of years before I even raised my first money from 500 startups. And I think, that's sort of the mentality you need to go into going into this. It's like, all right, if there isn't any money coming from VCs, I mean, there are some VCs and some angels who are investing, so it's not like it's absolutely zero. But if you assume for a moment it is zero, what is it
Yep.
you need to do to just get sales? So the idea that I picked, you should be able to get sales relatively quickly,
Yep.
and um, the amount of capital you need should definitely flush that out before you begin. And if it means staying longer at your job and doing it as a side project, great. And that's what my business partner Eric Bond did in the last recession. Like he was at Intuit full time for many years doing his startup on the side in order to make ends meet.
Yep.
Or exactly how much capital you need, and so you save up that much from your job. But like that's the kind of thinking that I think people need to have, rather than, last year people just leaving their jobs and thinking, oh, I can go and raise $2 million out the gates. I think those
Yeah.
days are over for quite a while.
Yeah. And maybe that's a positive thing in some way because it does end up having. I mean, I just heard that I've forgotten what his name is, the guy that shuts down startups. January, February, he was shutting down 4 to 5 a week, and now he's shutting down 5 to 6 a day
Yeah.
during the crisis. And I mean, when you think, gee, what were those startups doing? What were they providing? Were they providing value? Who knows? So and a lot of them are venture-backed startups, so or at least angel investments. So maybe it's good to thin that out and actually have sort of some true grit showing.
Oh, I 100% agree with that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, like people have gotten too distracted by VC capital. I think people
Yeah.
have lost their bearings around what are the fundamentals in building a business. Well, we do need to
Yes.
get profitable at some point and some point soon.
Yeah.
And I think this will force everyone to be more disciplined. And I think entrepreneurs, frankly speaking, will be more rewarded for that too in the long run. Like, one of my friends started a company called Nerd Wallet, Tim Chen, and he
Oh, yeah.
started that company during the last recession and couldn't raise any money either. But
Yeah.
in the end, like, they are profitable, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue every year.
Yeah.
And he owns like, most of that company. And so that's great, like now in
Less,
retrospect.
yeah, less dilution, I guess, right?
Yep. A lot less dilution.
And I've been saying to the VCs that I've been interviewing that I see this as sort of an enforced retreat, this shelter in place. And for me, that's very restorative. I'm wondering what you personally have taken out of this shelter in place.
On a personal front,
Yes, yeah. What's your insights?
Well, so outside of investing, I think that this whole situation has just been hard. Um, I think we see unemployment continuing to rise, and that's
Yeah,
just heartbreaking. But
globally. Yeah.
I mean, I think at the same time, what it's doing is it's really illustrating an acceleration, I think, of what was already there, which is, even prior to COVID, I was already feeling this quite a bit, which is technology has made a lot of things so efficient, eliminated a lot of jobs, continues to, and will continue to. And we need to do
Mm,
massive reskilling and also have safety nets for people as this continues. And I think that this will accelerate that because I think, unemployment is going up a lot. And, as we saw in the last recession, a lot of jobs just actually never came back because
mm,
when things get hard and cash is, a real crunch, then business owners have to make these tough decisions and let go of people and then come up with more cost-effective options, which includes technology, it includes outsourcing, and that's going to happen again. Even once COVID is over and we start recovering from this, that's going to happen again. So I think we're going to have massive unemployment for a long time, and I don't know societally what the repercussions will be, but definitely lots of angst and lots of issues will and strife will occur because of that. And I, I feel rather helpless there. But we do need to do something.
and sometimes, difficult things can actually bring new ways of looking at life and business, and hopefully positive things will come out of it.
I hope so. I mean, I think unfortunately, when you're talking about things like unemployment, there's a lot of then reliance on changes in government,
Yes,
both in terms of leadership as well as in terms of actual, laws or things that get put into place.
yes.
And as you know, politics in the U.S. are always a dicey thing.
Yes, I saw an article or an editorial in the Irish Times this morning where they were saying that, they used to envy the US and now everyone pities them. So I was like, oh, gee, if the Irish are saying stuff like that, that's pretty bad.
I'm not sure we're really the envy of anybody these days.
No, exactly. Oh, look, delightful to speak to you again, Elizabeth, and so glad that the Hustle Fund is going well and you're going well, and really appreciate your input into the ecosystem. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Pamela. Thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Okay, see you later. Bye.
Bye.